Has your life played out exactly the way you'd always planned? Have all the circumstances of your life come together as you'd always expected they would? If you're being honest, the answer is, of course, no. Our lives are often characterized by unexpected challenges and even outright trials and troubles for which we weren't prepared and wouldn't have chosen for ourselves. The real question is, to what should we turn when the circumstances of our lives trouble us? Or to what ought we turn when we need guidance for this life? In Proverbs 3, 5-7, Solomon gives us a sound answer. In fact, he offers us 3 imperatives that give us a firm corrective to our natural earthly thinking when it comes to these sorts of questions. 3 imperatives, 3 directives, 3 instructions for us to heed and apply to our lives. He says this: trust in Yahweh with all your heart, and do not lean on your own understanding. In all your ways acknowledge him, and he will make your paths straight. Do not be wise in your own eyes. Fear Yahweh, and turn away from evil. Trust God, know God, fear God. He says, trust in Yahweh with all your heart, and do not lean on your own understanding. Too many people misunderstand what Solomon's saying here. They think he's trying to tell us that we're relying too much on our own intellectual ability to navigate your difficult situation. So just let go and put it in God's hand. Let him handle it. All you really need to do is take your hands off the steering wheel and trust that he's got you and he'll take care of you if you just stop struggling to think through your own problems. The trouble is, that's not what he's saying. That's not what it means to trust God. Rather, Solomon's trying to communicate here that we need to positively recognize that God is the ultimate authority over our lives, not us. And we need to actively inform our understandings and our intellects according to God's revelation instead of our own preconceived notions of reality. When he writes, trust Yahweh with all your heart, he's not appealing to our emotionality, which is often how we English speakers use the word heart. What he's actually doing is appealing to the intellectual cerebral core of a person, the heart. It's where the data enters and is processed and categorized and stored for future use. It's not a command to trust in God with all your emotions. It's an appeal to mental activity, to intellectual commitment. The whole verse is an exhortation to trust not in your own human understanding, but rather in God's, and even his revealed will for how you are to actively navigate your life. He's not saying that we should sit back and watch God make a masterpiece out of our mess. He's saying that we should sit up and focus in and remind ourselves of the guiding truths revealed to us in God's perfect word, and then employ them as we trust in God for the outcome. We need to trust in him with all of our hearts, with all of our mental ability. But that's not all. Not only should we trust God, Solomon also says that we should know God. Proverbs 3:6 says, in all your ways acknowledge him. He will make your paths straight. All your ways here represents all of the things in which you're engaged in this life. Everything that's on the calendar app on your phone or on the wall calendar in your kitchen. It's everything that occupies your mind. It's everything on your to-do list. It's your investments and your hobbies. It's what you do when you first wake up in the morning and what you do late at night before you go to bed. And what does Solomon say we're to do with all of our ways? We're to acknowledge him. And you can hear the concept there of knowledge or knowing right there in the word. It's the idea of being so intimately aware of the power of the object that you can't help but acknowledge or affirm its authority. We're to recognize and understand God in his rightful place as Lord over all things in our lives. To know him so well that we can't help but acknowledge our knowledge of him, even in the areas of our lives that in our foolishness may not seem to have anything to do with him. And if we do this, what does Solomon say right there will be the result? He says, he will make your paths straight. He's not saying, like many people assume, that the metaphorical pathways of our lives will become easy or simple. This isn't a promise of temporal comfort. Rather, Solomon is using the concept of straightness in contrast to the concept of moral crookedness or moral twistedness. Just like throughout the rest of the Proverbs, He's saying that if we know God's authority and live in light of that authority in every aspect of our lives, the natural byproduct will be moral uprightness, straightness of spirit, if you will. And then finally, Solomon tells us that we must fear God. He says right there in verse 7, do not be wise in your own eyes. Fear Yahweh and turn away from evil. The fear of God is a conscientious submission of every aspect of one's life to God's ways, God's will, and God's word. To fear God is to necessarily be humble. To fear God is to submit to Him consciously. To fear Him is to place yourself in the right ranking in God's economy. We're not in authority, and we're to acknowledge that here in verse 6. We're not sources of wisdom, and we're to acknowledge that here in verse 7. Rather, we're simply worshipers who are to, as Solomon says here in the end of verse 7, humble ourselves in reverence before Almighty Yahweh and turn away from evil. To what should we turn when circumstances of our lives trouble us? To what ought we turn when we need guidance for this life? The answer can be nothing other than these three directives that Solomon gives us in these 3 verses. Trust God, know God, and fear God.